Say that's a calling that some CEOs don't hear sometimes, and we are aware of many of your efforts in South Africa, your establishment of a group called the Elders in Africa. Tell us about that, and what led to this calling that you have for social justice.
Well, if I'll start with the Elders. I mean, just before the war in Iraq, a few of us were obviously extremely worried about the idea of the war. Britain and America were embarking on a war that some of us questioned, and I think, generally speaking, there's almost no justification for war, period. I think there must be alternatives in this day and age than for people to go around killing each other, but worse still, all the collateral, that easy word, collateral damage, but when you sort of collateral damage where children, women, girls, young boys maimed and ruined for life. So I'd seen a situation in Africa where a group of elders had gone to see Idi Amin, and they persuaded him to step down and go and live his life out in Saudi Arabia. And I thought that maybe we could persuade Saddam Hussein to do the same. If a group of elders went to see him who he had respect for. And so I talked to Nelson Mandela and Kofi Annan, and they agreed to go. And we sent a plane to Johannesburg, and sadly on the day the plane was due to take off, the bombing started, and the meeting never took place. Now it may have come to nothing, but it was worth a try. And then, as a result of that, I spoke with Peter Gabriel and myself, spoke with Nelson Mandela and his wife, Graça Machel, and they agreed to be the founding elders of a new organization that would get the 12 most respected people in the world, in Nelson Mandela's view, people with high moral authority, people who had put their ego behind them, maybe were in the last 10 years of their lives, to go in and try to settle conflicts and use their moral authority to settle conflicts, not their political positions. And so he asked Kofi Annan, he asked Archbishop Desmond Tutu, President Carter from America, Mohammed Yunus, an incredible collection of people. And they now, in the last 12 months, I mean, they notably resolved a horrible conflict that was taking place in Kenya by three of them, Archbishop Tutu, Graça Machel, and Kofi Annan, going there and getting the opposition party, getting the ruling party together in a farm for 3 weeks, knocking heads together, arranging for a coalition government to come out of it. And peace came back again. And so that's obviously a very exciting, wonderful organization to be involved with.
And this is a calling, though, you've had since you were a teenager, isn't it? Did you not start a nonprofit at a young age?
Yes, I mean, I was running a national student magazine, had hundreds of people contacting us with all sorts of problems. I mean, well, you can imagine it was the 60s, so where's the nearest VD clinic? Anyway, all sorts. You name it. You name it. We had every single problem that any young person would come to our doors. So we set up a centre called the Student Advisory Centre, and basically just to show students where they could go to get help with different kinds of problems. And actually, that still runs for 40 odd years later.
I see. Now, you've also launched a School of Entrepreneurship in South Africa. Tell us about that school, and do you visit the school? Do you go meet some of your successful people there?
I do, and it's if anybody's ever in Joburg, would love you to go and visit. It's kids out of the townships, and because during the regime of apartheid, I mean, no kids have got parents who have had any entrepreneurial experience. So they've got no grandparents, you know. So they're literally. Archbishop Tutu I saw last week, and he every time you see him, he tells a story to try to illustrate a point, and it's always quite an amusing story as well. But he was explaining that during the time of apartheid, black people were so so downtrodden that they had lost all respect for themselves and what they were capable of. And he said that 3 years after apartheid had been abolished, he was getting on a plane and he saw 2 black pilots, and he just leapt up and down. This was, you know, the most exciting thing ever, and he was whooping and dancing, and then he buckled in and the plane took off, and it hit some turbulence, and he said, I was gripping his seat. We're all going to die. They're black pilots. Anyway, but he details the story better than I. But anyway, but anyway, what we're trying to do with the school is help. Just first of all, just give students out of the townships the basics, and then to try to help them become entrepreneurs. Now, teaching people to be an entrepreneur in the West, I think, is quite difficult. I mean, you can try, but often you just want to get on out there and just get into the real world and learn the art of survival and fall flat in your face and start again and so on. But I think that a school of entrepreneurship is needed just to help them get a leg up, and we have people, generous people from places like London and maybe Boston who put a little bit of money up, so we can then give the best students a small amount of money to maybe £500 or $1,000 or something to the best students to kickstart their businesses.
Excellent. Now, you have challenged yourself for years in balloons and planes and ships and boats. I guess last fall you were attempting a crossing when you hit 40-foot waves and 7, 8 force winds. Are you through with that, Richard, or does the challenge still churn inside you?
No, I mean, I love a challenge, and I always kick myself when I say no, and I sometimes kick myself when I say yes, but no, I mean, that's a job we still have to finish to do. We were lucky enough to be asked to go on this incredible boat, and for about 2 days it looked like we were ahead of the record. Everything looked good, and then we hit this ferocious storm.
You had your children on board, right? Your daughter and son?
I hasten to add, my young adult children, yes, and they would love to come back again. So they've got the adventure bug, and my son's is an Arctic explorer, and has written books about global warming and what's happening in the Arctic there, and so I think if you're in a fortunate enough position to be able to do these kinds of things, it would be sad not to say yes.
So who was the first one to say, let's abort this voyage? Was it you, your daughter, or your son?
What was the question again?
Who was the first to say, let's stop this attempt to cross the Atlantic?
Sadly, I think it was settled for us. Once the mainsail had ripped in quite a major way in the storm, I think somebody up there was telling us something.
Well, it's a pleasure speaking with you. We're going to open the floor to questions, and we have some roving microphones. We're going to bring the house lights up a bit so we can see you out there. But I did want to ask you about one last Virgin enterprise, and before we go to your questions, and that is Virgin Unite, an attempt to engage all of your employees. You have thousands of them around the world. Tell me about the aim of Virgin Unite.
Well, I mean, I think every company perhaps should have the equivalent of a Virgin Unite. The sorry about this. Virgin Unite is a way of getting all 60,000 employees who work for Virgin involved in charitable work. And surprisingly, most of them want to be involved. And they're incredibly proud, I think, of working for Virgin, not just because they're proud of the services it delivers to the public, but because Virgin is making a real difference in the world. And we try through Virgin Unite to involve our employees as much as possible. And Virgin Unite is there to use the entrepreneurial skills of the people who work for Virgin to look at different problems in the world and see if there's a better way of tackling them. So for instance, in Africa, why are diseases, still killing hundreds of thousands of people? Is it being organized? Is the attack on these diseases being organized as well as they should? There's 100,000 wonderful organizations there doing great works. We examined it and decided that what it was lacking was a Center for Disease Control, which you have a very good Center for Disease Control in America. Africa doesn't have one. So we're fairly far advanced in setting up a Center for Disease Control. So A, to coordinate the attack on the current diseases, but B, quite importantly, if a new disease crops up, to be able to jump on it very quickly. If you say take carbon, carbon is one of the world's greatest enemies at the moment. There are lots of people talking about how to deal with carbon. There's lots of governments talking about bringing in legislation to try to tackle carbon. But once again, there is no, if carbon was the enemy, there would be, which is threatening the world to the extent that some people believe it is, there would be a centralized war room. There would be maps. There would be, people would be working out, how are we going to build the next carbon Spitfire to go and take it on, or the next Hurricane, or the, so we are actually in the process of setting up a carbon war room where where we can share with governments all the best ideas that are going on. When a new Secretary of State for the Environment comes into the job all afresh in the UK, say, instead of them having to spend years learning, we can just go to them and say, look, this is what it'll cost you. These are the recommendations that would make sense. We can also look at some of the more off-the-wall ideas. I mean, we've put up a prize for $25 million for anybody who couldn't come up with a way of extracting carbon out of the Earth's atmosphere. James Lovelock, he's 91 years old now, one of the greatest environmentalists alive. I mean, he has an idea a minute as to how to...
I thought you did.
Yeah, exactly. But nobody's capturing those ideas. Nobody's examining those ideas. I mean, for instance, just one idea that he wrote about the other day, where he said, if farmers throughout the world could turn their waste product in their field into carbon and then bury it in the fields, that would resolve the problem of global warming. Now, a big statement. So, the Carbon War Room will then examine that statement, do research on it, and if it happens to be true, we'll launch the biggest campaign ever to try to get farmers and governments to do that.